Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the online sessions of Dar Irkam Schools, Gujarat region. This is the lecture for Cambridge 2 History and Culture of Pakistan. Open up your books, chapter number 14, General Ziaul Haq. Today, the topic of our discussion is General Ziaul Haq. You have to open up your page number 147 and onward. We are going to discuss about it. So, General Ziaul Haq. General Ziaul Haq. Who was General Ziaul Haq? After the elections of 1977 that we have discussed in the previous lectures, we had discussed about the Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and after the elections of 1977, Bhutto called a general election. He was confident that his government record and the lack of effective opposition would result in an easy PPP victory, that is Pakistan People's Party. However, once the election was called, 9 of the various opposition parties combined to form the Pakistan National Alliance. There were two issues which united the opposition in the election campaign. They all wanted to end the rule of Bhutto and the Pakistan People's Party, as they are united in their desire to rule Pakistan according to Islamic laws. So, General Ziaul Haq played an important role in implementing the Islamic rules or Islamization in the Pakistan during this time period. General Ziaul Haq had the army took control of Pakistan on 5 July 1977. 2 days later, martial law was announced and the assemblies were suspended. Zia arrested this was only until peace and was restored. He said he hoped that within 90 days it would be possible to hold new election. However, this relied on the unrest stopping, so that election campaign could be held in a peaceful environment. He accused Bhutto's government of corruption and misusing government's money. Though he produced no evidence for this, it certainly suited his purposes to be able to claim that the restoration of the peace and the exposure of the injustice were his most urgent task. He announced that the Bhutto's government had been corrupt and that those who had been misusing the government's money, preventing justice and exploitation, shunned the people of Pakistan. So, after the death of Bhutto, Zia's most immediate dilemma was how to handle the Bhutto case. The problem was particularly difficult because it was Bhutto who had appointed Zia the chief of army staff, even though he was junior to several other generals who hoped to be appointed. So Zia might be accused for acting in a disloyal way if the Bhutto received too severe punishment. So, some army officers thought that Zia was not capable enough to be the chief of army staff. So, in his dealing with Bhutto, he wanted to show that he could be determined leader. Bhutto was released from arrest at the end of July, but even he made it plain that he intended to re-arrest his political authorities. He re-arrested on the 3rd September along with the 3 others. So, using the force of SFS to kill him, the trial, which took nearly 2 years, resulted in the Bhutto being found guilty and sentenced to death. As the president, he had replaced Fazl Elahi in September 1978. Zia had the power to commute the sentence of the life imprisonment. Bhutto, however, was too dignified to appeal to Zia for his life. Many others at the home and abroad did so, but Zia, unmoved, Bhutto was hanged on April 1979. Zia used this affair to try to show that the people he was not the weak leader that many suspected that. So, there are many problems that were also faced by Zia as a leader, and from 1979, a series of Islamic laws were introduced in Pakistan. In 1979, a federal Shariat court was set up to consider the existing laws and the legal judgments and decide if they were keeping in the Islamic principle. We all know that we got Pakistan according to to live our lives according to the principle and teachings of Holy Quran and Islam, and that was also should be implemented in Pakistan. After many years, we got the Pakistan under the name of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and we were running Pakistan under the rule of 1835 that was introduced by the British government. Okay, Zia's policies were designed to unite the nation behind the common belief in the principles of Islam. However, there was also a concentration on the conservative values of Islam, partly as a mean of lessening support for the more socialist Pakistan People's Party. So the Hudud Ordinance was also introduced, and there were also some other rules as well. So, laws and the government. Under the laws in the government, Zia's civil service says, which Zia had also declared that should be impartial, was also brought under military control. Zia filled many posts with the military officers and fixed quota for the military men to transfer into the civil services academy each year. Thus, Zia was able to reduce opposition and provide career opportunities for his supporters in the army. The military nature of his government was further emphasized by the fact that was in 1982, 40% of Pakistan's ambassadors abroad were military men. He introduced the Majlis-e-Shura Islamic president to advise him on his government that he could run the government according to the principles of Islam. However, the members were appointed by the Zia and they had no legislative powers, so it was not really an effective parliament. What it did do, however, was to show Zia in a good light and allow him to win over potential opponents by appointing them in the parliament. So a new offense that was seen was of the disrespect of the Holy Prophet was introduced, with imprisonment or a fine as the punishment for the offenders. Zia also introduced a council of ideology to suggest ways which the legal framework of Pakistan could be brought closer to Islamic ideology. For this, he introduced the Majlis-e-Shura. There was also an attempt to enforce Islamic principle in the economic field by replacing the payment of interest with profit sharing. Zia was publicly committed to holding elections to return to the parliament after democracy, but he was also well aware that underdeveloped countries such as Pakistan, the best organized and the most stable force was the army. Bhutto had attempted to introduce the socialist mayors into Pakistan. Islam would provide an excellent counter ideology to the Bhutto's belief. The introduction of the Islamic mayor would win the support of the religious elements within Pakistan political parties. This applied in particular to Jamaat al-Islami, which was influential both in the administration and in the army. In 1979, a federal Shariat court was set up to consider existing laws according to the legal judgment. Keeping with Islamic principles, with three ulama later added their number. if the court decided that the existing law were not in keeping with the Islamic principle, they could be replaced. For example, one of the court's early decision was that the stoning to the death for adultery should be annulled. This decision was reversed by the court in 1982. The Federal Shariat Court was also to act as the court of appeal for cases originally tried by lower courts under the Shariat law. For this, he had also introduced some offensive against property ordinance, zina ordinance, zakat ordinance, and prohibition ordinance. In June 1980, Zakat ordinance imposed 2.5% wealth tax on saving a certain amount. This was a wealth tax. In keeping with Islamic principle, the money raised was given to zakat committees in the villages and the towns to meet the needs of the poor. Shia Muslims protested, saying that their view of Islamic law was that such giving should be voluntary. They organized a huge demonstration in Islamabad in 1984 and forced Zia government to exempt them from giving to pay the tax. At the same time, the Usher Ordinance imposed a 5% tax on the agriculture income raised under the ordinance was also paid into the Zakat fund to assist the poor. Islamiyat and Pakistan studies were made compulsory in the schools. Candidates appearing in the civil service exams were given extra marks if they have learned the Quran by heart. Efforts were made for promotion of the Arabic language. Radio Pakistan introduced Arabic courses and a daily news bulletin in Arabic was presented on the television. Okay, next we have is the Afghan case and its impact upon Pakistan in 1979. We usually call it the Afghan miracle. That is on December 25 in 1979. Soviet tanks rolled into Afghanistan. Until that time, the West had not taken Zia particularly seriously. And some Western leaders were unhappy that the military dictatorship had replaced democracy. It also led to the huge sums of money being poured into the Pakistan to pay the rehabilitation for refugees and to develop Pakistan army. By the invasion of the immediate impact of the international relations, now Zia was a leader of a Muslim nation on the front line against the communist forces of oppression. Zia was able to increase the defense budget and build up such an effective military forces that he was able to sell military assistance to the other Muslim countries. The West, and in particularly the United States, was ready to provide unconditional economic and the military support to establish Pakistan as a base for anti-Soviet activities. Pakistan became the largest supplier of the military manpower in developing world. In 1985, there were estimated 50,000 Pakistanis serving abroad in countries such as Saudi Arabia, Libya, Oman, Kuwait, and United Arab Emirates. Karachi itself became the best naval base in the region. The influx of the funds in 1980s also allowed Zia to undertake a degree of the economic reforms. The funds from the Western allies were matched by even larger amounts being remitted to the Pakistan by workers overseas. There were 2 million Pakistanis working in the Middle East alone, and their remittance have been estimated to be in the region of $4 billion a year. Laws were passed that stated that the industries could be nationalized in the future in exceptional circumstances with fair compensations paid to the owners. Pakistan annual growth in the GNP was 6.2, higher in the world. So this is your lecture for today, and thank you so much for taking this lecture. In the case of any question or query, you can ask freely, and you have to do the short question or AID question mentioned on the page number 151 and 149. So, and the one question is on the page number 147. Till then, stay blessed, stay healthy. Fi amanillah, and do not forget to do your homework, as it will be checked when you came back to the class. Till then, stay blessed, stay healthy. Fi amanillah.